Hello, I'm Mike Gomez from Berean Bible Church, and today I'd like to bring you a sermonette on the subject of, well, the title of the message is, Are We Near the End? It's my hope that you'll get something useful out of our time together, and we're going to bring this message to you in two parts. Today is part one, of course, and what I'd like to talk to you about is the current climate we live in and whether or not the things that are going on indicate in any way that the return of our Lord / end of the world is getting ready to happen. You know, over the years I've observed that often when there is a significantly adverse event facing our world, it leaves many people wondering whether the event itself might somehow be a sign that the end is near. And of course, those who revere the Word of God, the Bible, believe that the end is going to be accompanied by the return of the Lord Jesus Christ to gather his followers unto himself. And many refer to that as the rapture. At present, we find ourselves in the middle of a substantial world difficulty, namely the coronavirus pandemic. And you know, when this first started, this pandemic, when it first started to get serious, I considered that some would be likely wondering about whether this has any connection to the end and or Jesus' predicted return. Sure enough, between the pandemic itself and some other things that have gone on in our society, we're about, well, if you start from the beginning of the year, we're approximately 9 months into this thing here in America. There's been many people make comments wondering whether or not somehow this is a sign that the end is upon us. Many have spoken these things, and I believe many more have wondered these things. Fortunately for us, the Bible has some very useful things to say about all this. And the next little while, I hope to give you some information about what you can look for regarding whether the end might be close at hand or whether it's still a ways off. Now, I need to establish something early on, and that is that as people of faith, we believe that Jesus Christ is going to return, and we believe that because the Bible tells us that. And there's many passages we could look at to establish this, but I'll just read you one. It's the book of Hebrews, chapter 9 and verse 28, which says, So Christ also, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time for salvation without reference to sin to those who eagerly await him. Now the problem is, it isn't just that people believe in his return. We should be believing that. But the problem is how much people want to believe in his return. And it's that wanting to believe that causes people to have a biased perception about whether or not the end is near. I want to give you some examples over the course of my Christian lifetime of how this has played out, and you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. Let's go back all the way to about 1987 when I first got in the faith, and I was in a Sunday school class with a bunch of young people. We called the class College Career Group at the time. And I was a brand new Christian, brand new to evangelical Christianity. And somebody had brought a little paperback book to the class called 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Occur in 1988. And everyone was taking a look at this book. It was making its way around the Sunday school class, and it got to me. And I'm reading these reasons that are about 1 page per reason, little short blurbs, and I'm thinking to myself, that sounds reasonable, that makes sense. I can't disagree with that. I was deferring to the knowledge and experience of the one who wrote the book. Being brand new to the faith, they were in this thing a lot longer than me, and these reasons made sense. Well, of course, 1988 came and went, no return of the Lord. Okay, then a few years later, I had been in the faith a while, and for those who were old enough to remember this, we had the first Gulf War. And the first Gulf War was composed of 2 parts. There was Operation Desert Shield, that was the build-up to the Gulf War, and then there was Operation Desert Storm, where actually hostilities broke out. Well, during the build-up portion, where over 200,000, as I recall, American service people were called to go over to the Middle East in preparation, the build-up portion, there was a lot of uncertainty about what this meant, and there were people of faith who were believing that they were reminiscing over Jesus' words in Matthew 24. Matthew 24:6, Jesus said, You will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not frightened, for those things must take place, but the end is not yet. He said those things in the context of his return, and people were beginning to wonder, you've got this thing going on in the Middle East. Is it possible that this is a sign of his return? Now, right along that same time period, I was driving around in my car listening to Christian radio, and I couldn't tell you the name of the preacher, but somebody came on, I think he was a local preacher, and he just said emphatically, "We are in the end times, brothers and sisters." And, just convinced because of what was going on that this was getting ready to happen. Well, of course, the first Gulf War came and went, no return of the Lord, okay? The next big thing that happened was year 2000, and there was a tremendous adversity and uncertainty connected with the fact that people were concerned the world might cease to function as we knew it because computers couldn't roll over properly to the year 2000, and could this possibly be connected with the return of the Lord or the end of the world? One particularly prominent preacher that was involved in this was a man by the name of Jack Van Impe. He's no longer with us, but he had a large ministry based out of Metro Detroit that went out all over the world with a weekly television program. It was not just him, but it was him and others that were really on board, believing that the year 2000 or thereabouts was going to be the time of the Lord's return. Well, you guessed it, year 2000 came and went, no return of the Lord. Jack Van Impe, I'm going to refer to him later on. There's a significance that I'll be referring to him a little later, but you see a pattern here, right? You see that there's people who've not just believed, they've wanted to believe in something so much, and they've made these statements or predictions, and then they haven't come to pass. There's another one that's really noteworthy here I want to share with you, and you may or may not recall this one, but there was a man by the name of Harold Camping. He headed up a ministry called Family Radio out of California, not to be confused with Family Life Radio, two different ministries. And he actually made a prediction of an exact date that he said the Lord was going to return. And the date was May 21st, 2011. And the reason I found out about it was that I'm driving around town here in Metro Detroit, and I see these billboards advertising this predicted date and Bible verses on them, and I looked up to find out what was going on, and here's this prediction coming out of this man and his ministry. Apparently they'd spent a tremendous amount of resources to get the word out all over the world. And that, May 21st, 2011 came and went, no return of the Lord. Long story short, there's been a lot of other claims, both before and since. One more that deserves at least a mention was there were people who were believing that 2012 might somehow be connected with the end of the world, the end of the Mayan calendar. Some of you may recall that. It seems like there's always somebody somewhere thinking that the end is near, and they make predictions based on that. And then it's not a new phenomenon. If you have any interest at all in these things, you can do some research for yourself. Wikipedia, if you just go to Wikipedia and type in predictions and claims for the second coming of Christ, I believe this kind of thing's been going on ever since he left the first time, but they have one example after another dating all the way back to 500 AD. And what I want to go ahead and do is I want to go ahead and state the obvious or restate the obvious. You already know what I'm getting ready to say, but every person or every minister or ministry that's ever predicted a date or a range of dates, if that date or that range of dates has come and gone, every last one of them has been wrong so far. And that's really worth thinking about. It again evidences the idea that it's not just what we believe, but what we want to believe that colors our perception of things. And not to mention that it's exciting. It's exciting to think that the Lord might be returning in the near future. That kind of preaching will get you on the edge of your seat. It's exciting to think that he might return within the near future of the one giving the message, which is usually the case. It's usually The prediction is usually within the near future of the one giving the date. I also believe strongly that it brings a certain significance to the life of the one making the predictions. They get the spotlight for a while, to be the bearer of that news. The problem is it works until it doesn't work, and then it's a problem. There's fallout, it's awkwardness for the rest of believers. I remember there was some rather significant fallout, especially when Harold Camping's prediction failed to come to pass because of the publicity that it got beforehand. It's awkward for the rest of us. There's also the fallout that sometimes people have believed a prediction strongly enough that they have acted upon it in the decisions they've made with their lives. There's people who've sold homes or sold property believing the end was near. There's people who have quit jobs thinking the end was near, or maybe they've failed to pursue higher goals or certain goals, higher education. Why bother if the Lord's coming back soon? And I have a personal connection to this. Tell you this little story. I met a man approximately my age, and even though we were similar in age, human age, he was a brand new believer. I had been in the faith quite a bit longer by the time we met, and he started watching Jack Van Impe on the television. This was around 2013, and by that point, Jack Van Impe had had another set of reasons why the Lord was coming back soon. With all due respect, we were long over the year 2000, and my friend had been watching him, and he said to me at one point, he said, "You know, my car is falling apart, but why should I get another car if the Lord's coming back soon?" On another occasion, he said, "You know, I don't really like my job much or the man I work for, but why get another job if the Lord's coming back soon?" And I said to him, "Be careful. He's done this before. He's made predictions that haven't come to pass." I didn't want to see my friend fail to make decisions with his life on the basis of predictions that couldn't be substantiated. And we discussed it, and I could tell from the way our conversation went that my friend, he was actually deferring more to Jack Van Impe than to me. And I get it. I mean, who am I compared to this man? Jack Van Impe had this phenomenal mind for the scriptures. One of his nicknames, I believe, was the man of 10,000 verses. He could pull up thousands of verses verbatim, word for word, and recite them. He had this fantastic mind for that. He had this ministry that went out all over the world to millions of people. And who am I compared to that? I get it, but 2013 came and went. It's now 7 years later, no return of the Lord. It evidences what I'm saying to you here in this message, you know. I lost track of that friend, so I don't know what decisions he did make regarding that, but it was an interesting exchange, you know, that he was ready to alter his life in these ways based on somebody else's predictions. And the question we could ask is, so what are we to do with all of this, right? And that's going to be primarily the subject of part 2, but I don't want to leave you completely hanging. Let me just say that it has largely to do with the signs of the times and how we interpret them. Now, it's interesting because I believe there's a lot more people talking about the end now than they were this time last year. And what changed? Of course, what changed is this difficult world adversity called coronavirus, the pandemic. It's got people talking more than they were used to, so they're looking at the signs of the times, thinking it's going to result in something. I look at the same signs of the times, though, and when we involve the Word of God, I would say to you that honestly, while His return could occur within our lifetime, I have nothing, according to the Word of God, to tell me that it's getting ready to happen anytime soon. And I'll go into greater detail as far as that goes in part 2.
To prepare for the next message, you are encouraged to read the Gospels of Luke, chapter 21, and Matthew, chapter 24.